The skyscraper wasn't just real estate. It was a battlefield, and I was about to walk straight into an ambush. David Park's message had been clear. Meet him at the half-finished Providence Tower in Boston, 2 a.m., come alone. Agent Vasquez said it was obviously a trap. Vincent Torrino was orchestrating my death from prison, using David Park as his executioner. But I went anyway, because that skyscraper held secrets that could bring down Vincent's entire national network. Because 100,000 people were living in contaminated housing across 6 cities, and this was my only chance to stop it. Because my father had died trying to expose these crimes, and I wasn't going to waste his sacrifice. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and this is how a half-finished skyscraper in Boston became the most dangerous place I'd ever been. This is the night I learned that some buildings aren't meant to house people. They're meant to bury secrets. And sometimes they're meant to bury the people who discover those secrets. Providence Tower was supposed to be Boston's newest luxury residential building. 42 stories of premium apartments overlooking the harbor, starting prices at $3 million per unit. Construction had stopped 6 months ago when the primary investor mysteriously pulled funding. The official reason was market conditions. The real reason, according to FBI intelligence, was that environmental inspectors had found contamination levels so high that the building would never pass safety certifications. But David Park's development company was planning to finish construction anyway. They'd bribed the right officials, falsified the right reports, and were preparing to sell luxury apartments on land so poisoned that living there would be a death sentence. I arrived at the construction site at 1:45 a.m., wearing 3 different recording devices and a bulletproof vest under my jacket. Agent Vasquez and her team were positioned in surveillance vans 3 blocks away, ready to move in if things went wrong. But we all knew that if David Park wanted me dead, the FBI response time wouldn't matter. The construction site was eerily quiet. 42 stories of steel and concrete rising into the Boston night, surrounded by chain-link fencing and warning signs. I found an unlocked gate exactly where David's message said it would be. No security guards. No cameras. Just an open invitation to walk into a trap. The ground floor was gutted concrete and exposed rebar. Construction equipment sat abandoned, covered in dust. My footsteps echoed in the empty space as I made my way to the service elevator. It was operational despite the construction stoppage, which meant someone had been here recently. Someone was expecting me. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending to my own execution. My FBI panic button was in my left pocket. My recording equipment was running. My gun, issued by the Bureau for this operation, was holstered under my jacket. None of it made me feel safer. The elevator doors opened to reveal an unfinished penthouse level. Floor-to-ceiling windows without glass, open to the cold Boston wind. Exposed concrete floors, dangling electrical wires. And in the center of the space, illuminated by construction lights someone had set up, stood David Park. But he wasn't alone. Standing with David Park were 6 other people I didn't recognize. Men in expensive suits that looked wrong in a construction site. Women with cold eyes and calculating expressions. This wasn't a business meeting. This was a tribunal. Marcus Chun, David said, using my undercover name. Thank you for coming. I'd like you to meet some of my associates. He introduced them one by one. Jennifer Walsh from Philadelphia. Richard Santos from Washington, D.C. Maria Lopez from Miami. Each one ran a development company in their respective city. Each one was part of Vincent Torrino's network, using the same methods my mother had pioneered. We wanted to meet you in person, Jennifer Walsh said, her voice as cold as the wind blowing through the open windows. Vincent speaks highly of you. Says you understand the real estate business better than most people your age. Vincent's in prison, I said carefully. How is he speaking to anyone? Vincent has ways of communicating, Richard Santos replied. Even from inside. He tells us you're Marcus Chun, tech entrepreneur, looking to invest in contaminated property development. Is that accurate? That's why I'm here. No, Maria Lopez said, pulling out a tablet and turning it to face me. You're here because you're Michael Rodriguez, FBI informant, son of the woman who pioneered our business model, brother to the investigation that put Vincent in prison. On the tablet screen was my real driver's license photo, FBI credentials, documentation of my cooperation agreement. Everything that proved Marcus Chun was a fake identity. My hand moved toward the panic button in my pocket, but David Park was faster. He pulled out a signal jammer and activated it. Your FBI backup won't be receiving any transmissions from this building. Your recording equipment stopped working the moment you stepped off that elevator. And your panic button is just an expensive piece of plastic now. I was completely cut off from help 42 stories above Boston, surrounded by people who knew exactly who I was. Here's what's going to happen, David Park said, walking toward the edge of the unfinished penthouse where there should have been windows. You're going to tell us everything the FBI knows about our operations. Every investigation, every informant, every piece of evidence they've gathered. And then we're going to decide whether you live or die. And if I refuse? Jennifer Walsh laughed. Then you're going to fall 42 stories onto concrete. Tragic construction accident. Young investor exploring a development site after hours, lost his footing, fell through an opening where windows should have been. These things happen in real estate. They had it all planned. My death would look accidental. The FBI would suspect foul play, but wouldn't be able to prove it. Vincent's network would continue operating, poisoning communities across America. You're wondering how we knew you were coming, Richard Santos said. How we knew Marcus Chun was actually Michael Rodriguez. Let me show you something. He pulled out his phone and played a video. It was footage from inside FBI headquarters. Agent Vasquez briefing her team about my undercover operation. Our planning sessions. Our strategy meetings. Everything we discussed about infiltrating Vincent's network. You have someone inside the FBI, I said, my stomach dropping. We have several people inside the FBI, Maria Lopez corrected. Just like we have people inside the EPA, the Justice Department, city planning offices across the country. Vincent didn't build a real estate empire by hoping regulations wouldn't catch up with him. He built it by controlling the regulators. This was worse than I'd thought. Vincent's network wasn't just bribing officials. They'd infiltrated law enforcement itself. Everything I'd told the FBI had been passed directly to the people I was investigating. The question now, David Park said, is whether you're smart enough to survive this conversation. Because we have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Join us. For real this time. Not as an FBI informant pretending to be an investor, but as an actual partner in our operations. You understand how we work better than anyone outside the organization. You have connections to law enforcement that could be valuable. And you're young enough that people don't suspect you of being sophisticated enough to run contaminated developments. It was the same pitch Vincent had made. The same offer my mother had extended. Join the criminals or die trying to stop them. You're insane if you think I'd help you poison more people, I said. We're insane. Jennifer Walsh moved to stand beside David Park at the edge of the building. You exposed your own mother's crimes and crashed the entire real estate market. You destroyed thousands of jobs, bankrupted families, caused an economic crisis that's still destroying lives. And you think we're the insane ones. I stopped people from being poisoned. You stopped nothing, Richard Santos said. There are more contaminated developments being built right now than when your mother was operating. Because the market crash made contaminated land even cheaper. Made desperate investors even more willing to cut corners. Your crusade didn't save anyone. It made the problem worse. The worst part was, they might be right. Since exposing my mother's operation, environmental enforcement had become stricter, but so had the incentives to cheat. Property values were so low that only the most aggressive developers could afford to build. And aggressive developers were the ones most willing to hide contamination. Here's what we're offering, Maria Lopez said, pulling out a contract from her briefcase. $5 million per year. CEO position at a new development company we're launching. Complete immunity from prosecution through our connections in the Justice Department. A chance to rebuild your reputation as a successful real estate developer instead of the most hated whistleblower in America. And all I have to do is help you kill more people. All you have to do is stop fighting a battle you can't win, David Park said. The real estate industry has operated this way for decades. Your mother didn't invent environmental crime. She just perfected it. And now that she's gone, we've improved her methods even further. He pulled up architectural plans on a large tablet. Look at this. Providence Tower, where we're standing right now. 42 stories. 300 luxury apartments. Total project value, $900 million. Built on land contaminated with industrial waste from a paint factory that operated here from 1945 to 1987. The contamination levels are lethal. The contamination levels are manageable if you know how to hide them. We've developed new construction techniques. Vapor barriers that prevent chemicals from entering living spaces. Sealed foundation systems that contain contamination underground. Air filtration that removes toxic particles before residents breathe them. That's still not safe. It's safe enough. Cancer rates might be slightly elevated. Birth defects might occur at marginally higher frequencies. But most residents will live perfectly normal lives. And the ones who don't. David shrugged. That's the cost of urban housing development. While they were explaining their improved contamination concealment methods, I noticed something. The construction lights illuminating the penthouse weren't just for our meeting. They were positioned to highlight specific areas of the building. Areas where the construction was different from standard designs. Those vapor barriers you mentioned, I said, moving closer to examine walls. Where are they installed? Throughout the foundation and lower floors, Richard Santos explained. Prevents contaminated soil gases from entering residential spaces. But as I looked at the construction details, I realized something was wrong. The vapor barriers weren't designed to protect residents. They were designed to trap contamination in specific areas of the building. Areas that would eventually become mechanical rooms, storage spaces, and utility corridors. You're not trying to keep contamination out of apartments, I said slowly. You're concentrating it in areas where maintenance workers will be exposed. Jennifer Walsh's expression didn't change. Maintenance workers are temporary employees. They're not residents. They don't live in the building. So it's acceptable to poison them instead. It's a calculated risk management strategy. Residential lawsuits are expensive. Worker compensation claims are cheaper and easier to settle. They'd turned environmental crime into an actuarial calculation. How many workers could they poison before the liability costs exceeded the construction savings? How many maintenance employees would get sick before anyone noticed a pattern? My recording equipment might not be working, but my phone was still in my pocket. I carefully pulled out, angling it to capture the architectural plans David had displayed on his tablet. I need to think about this, I said, taking photos as discreetly as possible. This is a big decision. You have 30 seconds, David Park said, checking his watch. After that, we assume your answer is no, and you take an accidental fall through that window opening. My mind raced through options. The FBI couldn't hear my panic button. My recording equipment had been jammed. I was 42 stories up with no backup and no escape route. Even if I managed to trigger some kind of alarm, help wouldn't arrive before they threw me off the building. But I had one advantage they didn't know about. While photographing the architectural plans, I'd activated my phone's emergency beacon. It didn't send audio or video, just my GPS coordinates and a silent distress signal that would alert Agent Vasquez's team that something was wrong. The question was whether they'd get here in time. 20 seconds, David Park said. I weighed my options. Accept their offer and become exactly what I've been fighting against. Refuse and die 42 stories above Boston. Or try a third option that probably wouldn't work, but was better than the alternatives. I accept, I said. Relief washed over their faces. They thought they'd won. Thought they'd converted another investigator into a criminal. Thought I'd chosen money over justice. They were wrong. Excellent decision, Jennifer Walsh said, extending her hand to shake mine. Welcome to the organization, Michael. I took her hand, then pulled hard, using her momentum to spin her toward the window opening. She screamed as she stumbled forward, barely catching herself on a piece of exposed rebar. Chaos erupted. Richard Santos lunged at me, but I ducked under his grab and swept his legs. He went down hard on the concrete floor. Maria Lopez pulled out a gun, but David Park shouted, "No weapons. We need this to look like an accident." I ran for the service elevator, but two of the associates I hadn't been introduced to blocked my path. Big guys, probably security, definitely dangerous. I pulled my FBI-issued gun from its holster, but Maria Lopez had already recovered and was aiming at me. "Drop it," she commanded. Mexican standoff. Two guns aimed at each other, 42 stories up, surrounded by criminals who wanted me dead, but needed it to look accidental. That's when I heard the most beautiful sound in my life. Sirens. Multiple sirens. Police cars, FBI vehicles, maybe even fire trucks responding to my emergency beacon. "You called the cops," David Park said, his face going pale. "How?" "We jammed everything." GPS emergency beacon. Silent alert. Activated the moment I pulled out my phone to take those photos. More sirens. Closer now. The construction site would be surrounded within minutes. Jennifer Walsh recovered from her near fall through the window and rushed at me with something that looked like a piece of rebar. I fired my gun, aiming high over her head. The shot echoed through the empty building and everyone froze. "FBI." I shouted, even though technically I was just a consultant. "Drop your weapons and get on the ground." They didn't drop their weapons. Instead, they scattered. David Park ran for the service elevator. Maria Lopez and Richard Santos headed for the emergency stairwell. Jennifer Walsh and the security guys stayed, apparently deciding their best option was to finish what they'd started. The first security guy grabbed my gun arm. We struggled for control of the weapon, dancing dangerously close to the window opening. Below, I could see FBI vehicles pulling up to the construction site, agents flooding into the building. "Let go!" I shouted, trying to break his grip. He was stronger than me, trained in combat, probably former military. But I had motivation he didn't have. I had my father's death to avenge. I had 100,000 contaminated housing residents to protect. I had everything to fight for. I kneed him in the stomach, and his grip loosened enough for me to wrench the gun free. I aimed it at his chest. "Get on the ground. Now." He complied, hands raised. The second security guy saw his partner surrender and decided not to test whether I'd actually shoot. Jennifer Walsh made a different calculation. She charged at me with the rebar, screaming something about destroying her business. I sidestepped, and her momentum carried her past me, straight toward the window opening. For a moment, time seemed to slow down. I could have let her go. Let her fall through that opening the same way they'd planned for me to fall. Justice in a way. Poetic even. But I grabbed her arm at the last second, pulled her back from the edge. Because I wasn't like them. I wasn't willing to kill to protect my interests. She collapsed on the concrete floor, sobbing. You ruined everything. Vincent's empire, your mother's legacy, all of it. You destroyed billions of dollars in real estate value. Good, I said as FBI agents burst through the service elevator doors. That empire was built on corpses. Agent Vasquez led the tactical team, her weapon drawn, her expression a mixture of relief and fury. Michael, are you hurt? I'm fine. Got them all on camera. I held up my phone, which had been recording video since I'd activated the emergency beacon. Everything. The architectural plans showing how they concentrate contamination in maintenance areas. Confessions about poisoning workers. Admission that they have people inside the FBI. Vasquez's face went dark. They what? You've got a mole. Maybe several. They knew about my undercover operation from the beginning. They've been getting briefings from inside your office. As FBI agents handcuffed David Park and the others, I walked to the edge of the building and looked out over Boston. Dawn was breaking over the harbor. 42 stories below, the city was waking up, unaware that a criminal network had almost killed another investigator. But this time, the investigator had survived. This time, we'd gotten evidence that could bring down not just one development company, but Vincent's entire national operation. Agent Vasquez found me at the window edge 20 minutes later, after the suspects had been taken into custody. Michael, we need to debrief you. Get your statement about what happened here. Did you get David Park's phone? The one with the architectural plans. We got everything. Phones, tablets, computers. Enough evidence to prosecute the entire network, including the mole in the FBI. Her expression darkened. We'll find them. I promise you that. I turned to face her. This isn't over, is it? Even with all this evidence, even with arrests across 6 cities, Vincent's network is bigger than we thought. Nothing this big ever really ends, Vasquez admitted. We'll shut down their operations in these cities. We'll prosecute everyone we can identify. But other companies will try to fill the void. Other criminals will try to profit from contaminated land. Then what was the point, if nothing really changes? The point is that we saved 100,000 people from living in poison housing. We shut down an operation that was killing thousands. We made it harder for the next criminal to operate the same way. She put her hand on my shoulder. Your father died trying to stop this. You almost died tonight finishing what he started. That matters, Michael. It matters more than you know. As the sun rose over Boston, I realized she was right. We couldn't stop every environmental crime. Couldn't prosecute every corrupt developer. Couldn't save every family from contaminated housing. But we'd stop this one. And sometimes that had to be enough.